Federal government proposes merger of IPPIS as a payment platform. Deposed Emir Sanusi released from detention by court's interim order. In international news, Covid-19 becoming albatross on the neck of many nations. And in sport, league management company declares Lafayette Stadium out of service over Martin's death.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. A meeting between the federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities was adjourned after the government proposed a merger of IPPIS and the union salary payment system. Minister of Labour and Employment Chris Ngige, who chaired the meeting on behalf of the federal government, says the union did not notify the federal government before embarking on a warning strike. Ngige says both parties have an agreement to accommodate ASU's payment system, which is University Transparency and Account System. The two sides will have a go at it again on Monday. Kano's deposed Emir Muhammad Sanusi II can now move freely around the country. Earlier today, Justice Anwulu Chikere of the Federal High Court in Abuja granted an interim order releasing the deposed Emir from detention. The order also restored his rights to human dignity, personal liberty, freedom of association and movement in Nigeria. Apart from Kano State, pending the hearing and determination of the originating summons, the court adjourned till the end of the month. Many Nigerian lawyers have condemned the dethronement and banishment of the emir to Nasarawa, saying he was not granted fair hearing before the dethronement, as such banishment violates his freedom of movement. The Kano State government said on Monday it dethroned former Emir Sanusi for insubordination. Sanusi, who was governor of Nigeria's central bank before being enthroned as Emir of Kano, has always spoken out against harmful traditions and practices in the north. These utterances quite often angered the region's elite. And still on court matters, Justice Tafikat Oyekon Abdullahi of the Lagos High Court has struck out a contempt application filed against National Chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Uche Secondus, and other members of the party's National Working Committee. The judge struck out the contempt application following the applicant's request to withdraw the charge. Justice Oyekon Abdullahi also declined to impose ₦500,000 naira fine on the applicants for initiating the contempt proceedings. The claimants alleged the Secondus, Obi, and others disobeyed last November's court order, which restrained them from conducting a special election for vacant offices in the party's Lagos chapter. They claimed PDP conducted what they called the legal election despite having full knowledge of the case. Countries under the Lake Chad Basin Commission came together again to deliberate on how best to put an end to the ravaging insecurity challenge and how to improve the standards of living in the region. Reporter Kelechi Mekalam gives us an update.
A crucial meeting between a delegation from the Lake Chad Basin Commission and Nigeria's foreign ministry officials. It's geared towards furthering the Commission's goal to improve the living standards of 4 of its member countries, Chad, Nigeria, Cameroon and Niger, specifically the regions ravaged by Boko Haram's decade-long insurgency. So the Lake Chad Basin Commission is working to help stabilize the region.
Although governors of the affected states are the principal actors responsible for the development of the territorial action plans and the coordination of the process of their implementation, there should be ownership, coordination, and support by the federal government. This will ensure that the planning and implementation of the territorial action plans are integrated in national strategies and programs, and that governors receive support for initiatives that fall outside their competencies.
Boko Haram began its armed rebellion against the government in 2009, leaving the region in dire humanitarian crisis. Tens of thousands have been killed and millions displaced from their homes. It's a menace far beyond the control of the federal government.
We know that the humanitarian and military security challenge of the Lake Chad Basin region is something that impacts very severely and harshly on the 4 Lake Chad Basin countries. The purpose of this campaign is to sensitize not only actors within those 4 countries, but also our partners, our international partners, United Nations, the African Union, and bilateral partners, to efforts that are being made to coordinate the stabilization objectives.
The Lake Chad Basin Commission drafted a stabilization plan in 2018 with support from the African Union and the United Nations to address security, education, socio-economic recovery, and other issues in the region. The plan entails coordinated, structured, and well-resourced interventions by national and regional forces. It also hopes to address the socio-economic and political issues that spurred radicalization.
Coming up, African stories. Ghana, Gabon, Kenya reports first coronavirus cases. And later, international news. COVID-19 becomes the stabilizing force in world economy.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to stories from around the continent. Gabon, Ghana and Kenya have confirmed their first cases of coronavirus, joining a growing list of countries in sub-Saharan Africa to register positive cases. Kenya Health Secretary Mutahi Gabwa said in a televised speech in Nairobi on Friday, the patient is a 27-year-old female who had returned from US via London. He said the patient is stable. Gabon's case is also a 27-year-old. The government said in a statement on Thursday, the patient is a Gabonese man who had returned from France early in March. In Ghana, where 2 cases were recorded, the health ministry said the affected persons had recently returned from Norway and Turkey. The ministry said both patients are currently being kept in isolation and that they are stable. Sub-Saharan Africa has so far been less badly hit by COVID-19 than Europe or China. Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Senegal, Cameroon, Togo, South Africa, Burkina Faso, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco and Democratic Republic of the Congo have also registered cases. More than 127,000 persons have been infected globally and nearly 5,000 have died since the virus first emerged in China. While some African countries are just discovering cases of coronavirus, Egypt announced the continent's first confirmed case in February. Now it is one of 2 African countries that have announced first coronavirus deaths on the continent. All this is beginning to tell on its economy. And as Adel El Marouki reports, the Egyptian pound has fallen victim to the pandemic.
Since 2019, the Egyptian pound has gained nearly 12% against the US dollar. But in the last 2 weeks, it has lost 1.1% of its value to the greenback.
Fears from the coronavirus has made volatile investments like foreigners in the Egyptian stock sell their shares, putting demand on the US dollar. That is the main derivative from the US dollar to increase. I don't think it'll last.
The Egyptian pound is expected to keep strengthening once the fears from COVID-19 start fading. That's backed by the revenues from tourism, which remain unaffected by the virus so far. They are targeted to reach $16 billion this year.
In February, when the whole world was facing that crisis, nearly 900,000 tourists have visited Egypt, with a 4% increase from February 2019. During the first week in March, 210,000 tourists visited Egypt. This is the normal rate of visitors. The virus was spreading across the world.
حوالي 4% عن فبراير 2019.
With positive news coming from Huyan about corona and the news of vaccines coming out soon, the fears from the virus will go away on the medium term. And I think the Egyptian pound will then continue to rise, backed by the strong foreign currency reserves at the central bank and good USD cash flow for Egyptian banks, which together would reach $70 billion.
Several multinational institutions are backing the continuation of the Egyptian pound gains. Societe Generale expects it to reach £15.35 for $1 by the end of the year. The rate on Wednesday was 15.66. Those benefiting from the pound's depreciation should not get their hopes high yet. This fall the EGP has taken could only be a bump on its road to once again go up.
The formation of the transitional government in South Sudan could be unduly delayed because of disagreements over portfolio balance between President Salva Kiir and First Vice President Riek Machar. President Kiir sides wants to retain the finance, petroleum, defense and interior and foreign affairs dockets. Opposition says no. Reporter Patrick Hoyet has the story from Juba.
The new unity administration in South Sudan has only President Salva Kiir and his 5 deputies for now. The 2018 peace deal provides for appointment of ministers, members of parliament and state governors from all parties signatory to the agreement. Now, the parties are disagreeing on allocation of positions. The United Nations mission in South Sudan says it is now concerned over the delay in appointing the government officials.
The absence of authority at the state level has caused a vacuum of power and decision-making, as we have seen in Jonglei, emboldening those involved in recent violence and intercommunal clashes.
The United Nations says violence in the eastern part of the country in Jonglei State has now displaced 8,000 people. Residents of South Sudan's capital, Juba, are reacting to the delay in appointment of ministers and other local government officials.
In my view, our government should hurry up with the formation of the ministers so that people will return back to home, and our refugees are really waiting for this formation of ministers so that they will see the changes and they come back to their nation.
We are not happy. Every evening we go home and sit to listen to the radio, hoping to hear about appointment of ministers, but there is nothing. The government should complete this process.
We have been waiting for this peace for a long time to come now. We can wait a little bit for this process to be complete.
The United Nations is calling on members of the international community to support the South Sudan's peace process. The UN says security sector reforms scheduled to be carried out by the new government is lagging behind as the parties continue to disagree on the allocation of positions. It further says many armed groups continue to operate in a vacuum which can easily lead to clashes and returning the country to civil.
When we return, international news. COVID-19 becomes the stabilizing force in world economy. And later, sports. League management company declares Lafayette Stadium out of service over Martin's death.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international front, coronavirus is creating scenes around the world that have not been seen before or in a very long time. Markets around the world recorded their worst day in decades on Thursday. It was the same day the U.S. announced it was banning most travel from Europe with effect from tonight. The airline industry is already feeling the pinch, and well, maybe more than a pinch. Its bottom line is on the line. Americans are miffed about their president's lack of clear guidance on how to approach this huge health debacle that has changed the way of life in the country. But the House of Representatives will vote on a sweeping economic rescue package to offset the pandemic's colossal effect. The Champions League, which happens to be the grandest tournament in club soccer, could be suspended after Real Madrid became the latest team to be quarantined. Meanwhile, to the granddaddy of them all, Italy, the coronavirus-ravaged country is now between a rock and a hard place. Although it has a very admirable health system, it has been extremely stretched now that doctors are dealing with this virus in the wealthiest region of the country, Lombardy, with Milan as capital. Surgeries are now being cancelled. Respirators are not as plentiful to take care of all those whom coronavirus has forced to need them. Officials are now converting abandoned exposition spas into vast intensive care wards. Director of Infectious Diseases at Sacco University Hospital in Milan, Massimo Galli, said, quote, "The outbreak has put hospitals under a stress that has no precedent since the Second World War," end quote. China has reported that coronavirus is 80% cleared in the country. It has shut down several temporary hospitals that were set up specifically for the treatment of coronavirus patients. But now, the country is taking measures to ensure COVID-19 is not again brought into the country by those traveling from other infected countries like Italy.
Even though air passengers has fallen by over 80% last month, the major concern right now is in the prevention of imported cases as a result of the global COVID-19 increase.
We've classified flights into 3 risk levels. For low-risk flights, passengers will receive simple temperature checks. For medium-risk flights, cabin services will be reduced and they'll receive temperature checks on the plane. For high-risk flights, services will be minimized while the level of protection will be improved, and passengers suspected of having symptoms will be seated in the quarantine area.
Also on high alert are airports in Beijing and Shanghai. Beijing has isolated a terminal for flights coming from key epidemic areas. The T3D terminal has been in operation since Wednesday. The CAAC is also actively working with civil aviation authorities and international airlines in coordinating epidemic control measures.
We're sharing our experience and solutions with civil aviation authorities in Japan, Iran, and South Korea. We've also drafted our 3rd version of virus control operation guidelines and sharing those with airlines which have direct flights to China.
Coronavirus has proved that it is not a respecter of persons or positions. Many notable figures in politics, sport and entertainment have been infected. Yesterday, it was announced the wife of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been infected. As a result, Trudeau said he would be on a 2-week isolation. And Australia's Minister of Home Affairs and a Chelsea soccer player have also tested positive. And the list goes on. Movie star Tom Hanks and his wife, actress Rita Wilson, said on Thursday in Australia they have tested positive to the virus. As a result of this deadly virus, many sporting events have been suspended or cancelled. The Players' Championship golf has been halted and the Australian Formula One Grand Prix has been scrapped. Even climbers have been barred from Mount Everest in Nepal. When fans learned that Chelsea forward Callum Hudson-Odoi has tested positive to COVID-19, there were frantic calls for the Premier League season to be cancelled. Chelsea's first-team players and coaching staff say they would self-isolate. Arsenal manager was not spared. He has tested positive as well. The top men's tennis circuit has been suspended for 6 weeks and the National Hockey League has shut down. Even circuit cricket matches would be played in empty stadiums. The United States military has struck back at militants across Iraq on Thursday, and this is a payback for the rocket attack that killed 2 American troops the previous day. The Pentagon says the strikes were defensive, proportional, and in direct response to the threat posed by Iranian-backed Shia militia group. This was the first U.S. attack against militia groups that are related to Iran since an American drone attack killed Iran's most powerful military commander, Qasem Soleimani, near Baghdad in January. Up next, sports. League management company declares Lafayette Stadium out of use over Martin's death. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. League management company LMC has demanded the withdrawal of Christian Mba, who was the match commissioner in charge of MPFL match day 23 fixture. Mba was blamed for failing to ensure all requirements were in place before allowing the match to begin. And while the LMC has ordered no matches be hosted at the Lafayette Township Stadium until there is full compliance with medical requirements and measures stipulated in the league rules. Nasarawa United was fined 6 million naira. UEFA is considering postponing the European Championship until 2021 as it attempts to deal with the escalating coronavirus pandemic. European football's governing body will meet stakeholders on Tuesday to discuss a series of proposals aimed at solving the growing Covid-19 disruption of the calendar. Among the options being considered is the prospect of Euro 2020 being delayed for a year. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a great weekend.